These are some of my favorite writings by Lewis Mumford, and it's his notes on art from his book, The Golden Day, A Study in American Experience and Culture. And let me just say, Emerson, it was a tremendous influence on Mumford, and it probably his most significant influence. When do we feel the beauty and significance of the old ways? Mumford says this, he says, "It's at the hour when the old ways are breaking up that men step outside them sufficiently to feel their beauty and significance. Lovers are often closest at the moment of parting." And I guess that's the rub of it, toward the end point or the termination, when things are really moving on and transforming into something else, that's when we really step outside and we reflect on the beauty and the significance of how things were. Um, Supreme works of art offer us what? Mumford says this, he says, "Only commonplace works of art reflect the everyday personality of the reader or the viewer. The supreme works always show or hint of the new shape the reader may become. They are prophetic, formative," right? So that is so interesting. Like a supreme work of art, right, offers you a glimpse of your future possibility. There's something, the Greeks called that the entellechial. It has to do with uh, developing into the future. So I'm going to say this again, then I'll move on. Only commonplace works of art reflect the everyday personality of the reader. The supreme works always show or hint of the new shape the reader may become. They are prophetic, formative. What is the mission of creative thought? Mumford asserts the mission of creative thought is to gather into it all the living sources of its day, all that is vital in practical life, all that is intelligible in science, all that is relevant in the social heritage, and recasting these things into new forms and symbols to react upon the blind drift of convention and habit and routine. And so if I could paraphrase, right, he's saying like the mission of creative thought is to kind of take all the best of its day and to challenge habit and sort of like the order and figure out better new ways to live. What of the alternation between dream and deed? Life flourishes only in this alternating rhythm of dream and deed. When one appears without the other, we can look forward to a shrinkage, a lapse, a devitalization. Very interesting, people. Very, very interesting. Right? So the dream, I mean, what does he mean by the dream? It's like this extraordinary goal in the future that's possible. That's what a dream is. He doesn't just mean uh, dreams at night. No, that's part of it, but the whole idea is, what's your dream? What do you really want? What is, what are the outer reaches of possibility? The must and the maybe are what? Life exists in the possible as well as in the actual. The must and the maybe are equally valid. Another crazy, interesting sort of existentialist thing to say, right? The must and the maybe are equally valid. Because what he's talking about is potentially, specifically talking about your potential and what is possible for you to do if you only kind of developed a goal and resolutely attacked it. I mean, what wouldn't be possible for you if you were like the kind of disciplined soldier he was talking about when it came to goals? What is man's natural and proper condition? Life in the raw is blank. Cultivation, right? What does that mean? It means like development or creativity and a kind of pushing forward and growth. I mean, you think of cultivation, the top synonym would be growth. Probably second would be development. So cultivation is man's natural and proper condition. For life in the raw is empty, right? Just life without any kind of purpose is empty. What are the two meanings of the word reproduction? With respect to which meaning does culture flourish? There are two meanings to the word reproduction. One has to do with results of bringing together two different individualities, which mingle and give birth to a third, unlike either and yet akin to both. In contrast to this is mechanical reproduction, which takes a certain pattern and repeats it a dozen, 100, 1,000,000 times. Cultures flourish in the first kind of living contact, right? And so that's bringing two things together of different sorts, mingling them, and coming up with a third, which is not the same as either, yet like both in a way, you know. Uh, but this idea of mechanical reproduction is bad news for Mumford. A hardy and intelligent and believing age acts from day to day on the theory that what may happen, what age does Mumford refer to, is just such an intense period. This is kind of a weird question. I don't know. I probably should have pulled this from the study guide, but he says this. He says, a hardy and intelligent, a believing age acts from day to day on the theory that it may die tomorrow. In such periods of intensification, as in Elizabethan England, the good may well die young, because with a complete life, death is not a frustration. And, as I said, so, whatever. Okay, this is a fat slide, but I'm going to read it. What does it mean to say that a community is cultured? Culture, in its many ramifications, is a working over of the raw fact. Just as eating among civilized peoples is not a mere hacking and gnawing at flesh and bones, but an occasion for sociability and civil ceremonies. To the extent that the ceremony frequently becomes as important as the fact itself and works out into a separate drama, so every act tends to be done not just for its own sake, but for the social values that accompany it. The taste, the conversation, the wit, the sociability are aesthetic filaments that bind men together and make life more pleasing. And then Mumford says this. He says, to the extent that these shared meanings come into existence and spread all over the details of the day's activities, a community is cultured. To the extent that they disappear or have no place, it is barbarous. Right. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's an important, though it's a fat quote. I think it's important because it sort of speaks to how culture is, you can't divorce it from these dramatic ceremonies. It's how we're sort of ensconced or enveloped in the fabric of each other's lives. Mumford talks about style. So, what does he mean by style in its simplest terms? He says, style is the indication of a happy mental rhythm, as a firm grip and a red cheek are of health. Lack of style is a lack of organic connection. So, style for him is sort of the effect or outgrowth of what he says is like a happy mental rhythm or sanity. What does a complete culture lead to? A complete culture leads to the nurture of the good life. It permits the fullest use or sublimation of man's natural functions and activities, right? And sublimation is when it's like a Freudian term that means we kind of like transform our sort of organic instincts and our sort of natural emotions and our kind of primal self. It's when we can transform and channel that and canalize all those weird anxieties and aggressions and all that, and we can push that in certain ways, and then it becomes a great work of art, right? That it like to sublimate means to take those sort of basic organic instincts and emotions and transform them into greatness. All right, what does a complete culture lead to? A complete culture leads to the nurture of the good life. It permits the fullest use or sublimation of man's natural functions and activities. Confronted by the raw materials of existence, a culture works them over into new patterns in which the woof of reality is crossed by the warp of desire. It's awesome, man. So a complete culture leads to the nurture of the good life. In full lust of life, what is man? Or woman, right? Let's not be sexist. In full lust of life, man is not merely a poor creature, wryly adjusting himself to an external circumstance. He is also a creator an artist, making circumstances conform to the aims and necessities he himself freely imposes. So, I mean, in a nutshell, um, in full lust of life, we are creative. We are creative.